Well, hello. Welcome to another devlog. I've been up to some stuff this week, and I kind of want to just show it off and tell you the story of the week here. Let's see how it goes here. So this is all the things we'll be talking about. The beginning of the week was working on the RRL game engine and implementing different features and so forth. A lot of art. I kind of got into a lot of art at the beginning of the week, so there's a lot of that. Towards the end of the week, I started suffering with my ECS abstraction. You'll see that I actually abandoned the relative roguelike study. Not to fear, though, I started another study, and I just want to kind of get into all of that. There's a lot of lessons, especially with the ECS module that I'm creating, that I learned. I kind of want to go over. So let's just start from the beginning here. Physics with rotation. So you can see that I'm using Matter.js as my physics engine, and so I have physics working in the game engine. So one of the lessons learned here is that if you are doing an immutable ECS system, that you really want to work on extending things. So for instance, when you're passing messages, or when you're wanting to say, hey, there's a force that I want to apply, you want to extend the whatever your data structure is to say, hey, there's a force thing. I want to keep it real broad because I'm in the middle of creating this ECS system, but you want to just do message passing between the different systems is the thing I learned. So you want to treat your kind of your general data structure as more like a message passing system. So that was kind of an interesting idea. This is just some art, some good old fashioned art that I got into. So I'm calling this one Cradle of Geometry. I kind of like this one. It's pretty. Has a very sort of kindergarten-esque sort of feel to it. So I'm kind of imagining this is where geometry is born, in some sense. This is obviously me having just fun and goofing off with the engine, but I think you gotta blow off some steam and have some fun with the art. You can see that if you can pick it up on YouTube or whatnot, that these are slowly changing over time. So it's kind of a neat effect. Here's the static rendering if that shows up any better. I think the overall effect is pretty good. I'm kind of liking it. It's kind of pretty. It's just this is obviously just algorithmically generated art. It's pretty though. I like it. Let's see. So Svg Physics. Svg is kind of a cool one. I have in-body physics. So before I had, how did that? I can't remember exactly what I did different here. Oh, everything can collide into everything else. I'm not really. I can't remember what I meant by in-body. Mouse pick. So I have a mouse picker, so you can actually, click on a part of the screen and have something happen. But the big thing here is the meshes. Here, let me show you. Here. There's my first SVG mesh. So I'm using the built-in Three.js SVG asset loader, which is essentially just a thing that takes an SVG and converts it into what's called a Three.js shape. That's an abstraction within Three.js. So it kind of converts from SVG into this shape concept, and then it takes those shapes and creates a mesh, or meshes actually. The difficulty here is just getting it to, it's our old friend flip Y, but in kind of a completely new way in a sense, since you're dealing with meshes, and getting it centered and so forth was kind of difficult. But eventually, you can see I got it all working. It's again, it's like I said, it's just kind of funny that I keep running into this one particular issue with so when Three.js creates its mesh for the SVG, it does it's flipped Y, and the pivot point is the top left hand corner. And so I'm now a believer at this moment anyway, of the pivot point being the center point, and obviously I want the y flipped to the right hand rule, kind of standard coordinate system. So anyway, got it all working. It seems to be working pretty good, so I was pretty happy with that. And next up, just some more art, really. Just kind of, I'm kind of enjoying the. I call this like scratched. What do I call this? Scratched pastel. Yeah. Kind of look of it. This is again just all programmatically generated, but the key here is just getting the light and the lightness and the saturation correct of the colors. So this is really more, I don't want to say battling, but just playing with the colors and just having some fun. So let's see, how many of these do I have? Oh, there's another one. Yeah, they kind of look pretty, I think. Yeah, I like them. So next up, more. So this is a little bit better, I think. This is, I kind of learned some stuff. Let's see, do I have a few? Yeah, I have a few different examples here. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm kind of learning how pastel really was to work. And the trick with pastel, if you want a kind of a pastel look, is that you really want to stay, your lightness value wants to be about 50% if you're familiar with, how there's different color spaces, but if you're in the HSL color space, the 50% light is kind of your friend here for most of your colors, but you do want to have some super lights and some super darks, but very rare, very little of those is kind of the key there. But I'm kind of liking it, kind of enjoying what I created there. So I think I'm going to be exploring that a little bit further. Let's see. Okay. So the 15th was a bad day. So this is where our hero has some suffering and pain. The ECS abstraction that I'm using, or was using, let's say, because I've redone it maybe a time or two, was just poorly thought out. The general data structure. So what I call the fabric later on. So it's the thing that you're using to contain all of your entities and components. And, because you need to work with those things, right? You need to add components to your entities and remove them and just manipulate them and so forth. And the abstraction I was using was just not good. I would say it was, it's kind of a first go at it or second go at it. And so I'm getting a little bit better every time, but I think it's one of these things where you just got to learn and suffer a little bit. So the 16th was where I started abandoning relative roguelike. So this is with I essentially, one of my assumptions was bad, right, in this particular study of how to do the ECS module. And so I sort of took a note from my previous devlog. I think I made this point in my previous devlog that it's better to abandon projects early on when one of your primary assumptions turns out to no longer be valid. So I did that, and I'm fairly happy with how that worked. I'll go into the project that I went into after this one, but it's also a little bit of a bummer. I'm finding. I'll go into the summary of that at the end. Let's grab some tea here. I'm gonna want to grab some drink. My throat's getting a little dry here. Little green tea with heavy cream this time, which is good. It's kind of buttery flavored if you're into like tasting how things taste. I don't know. It's very good. So let's see where we are. Simplify. Well, let's see. Let's make sure I went through all the things. Yeah, let's go over the lessons learned here. ECS really wants to be, the ID really wants to be an entity. The ID really wants to be the entity. The entity really wants to be just an ID. is one of the primary learnings and failings of my previous ECS system. So don't treat the ID just as a kind of component. Treat it as just a straight number or string. You probably get away with a string, but some sort of very primitive identifier. Fail faster. So I failed faster on this project, and I was able to make progress on the ECS system a lot faster by not having to basically refactor my existing project to work with the new ECS system. The key to improvement is experimental repetition. So what I'm finding as I go through this process is that I'm redoing the same things over and over and over again, just a little bit better, sometimes a little worse, right? I'm making some mistakes, and my previous go was a little better. So it's like any sort of study, right? Where you make a sketch, and it's not, it's not perfect. It's not, you're not going to do everything, the way that you want to do it going forward. But you have to explore that space. You have to make those mistakes. And so it's just repetition. One of the keys I'm discovering is that one wants to boot faster. So if my bootstrap process, so how I get a project up and going is quick, I'm more likely to abandon my old projects, right? Like just say, well, heck with this one, I'll just start a new one with a blank sheet of paper, right? So imagine you're sketching on your notepad, and if creating a new piece of paper, a blank paper, was very difficult, like you had to go out and chop down a tree and pulp it and so forth, you'd be real cautious about starting a new sketch, right? But if all you had to do was like tear off the one page to expose the next page, you're going to be way, it's going to feel a lot better to start new. So booting faster, I think, is a good key here. So I do like the process I got into with the morning or afternoon time being kind of game development time or engine development time, where it's more analytical, I would say. And then the evening, when my analytical juices kind of run out, I still have a little something left in the tank, but I can't do the heavy lifting that I can in the morning and the afternoon. Art is that's just a good time for art, right? You're just kind of goofing off. There's no real rules. You just do something, experiment and play and have fun. And so I think art at the end of the day is a good practice. So be okay with creating needless abstractions. So one of the things I'm learning here is that, or I'm playing with, let's say, because I don't think I've quite learned this yet, is when to create an abstraction, when not to create an abstraction. There's a little bit of a battle, right? Because if you create an abstraction, you have to maintain it. So a lot of times abstractions have a cost, and it's usually not good to pay that cost. It's better to not create abstractions early, as sort of a general rule. And the thing that I'm learning, though, is that abstractions around concepts that I'm not, I don't understand fully, are better. That's a good place to put an abstraction, because that allows me to, when I do my refactoring, to refactor, under the hood of the abstraction. And hopefully a lot of my other code won't be too broken with the refactoring. So that's the idea there. That's not a new idea, but it's one I'm sort of playing with. Let's call it, at the moment, as I'm battling this ECS beast. Be slow to be demanding. So I made my ECS immutable really for no particular reason other than I thought it was a kind of a fun idea, right? I like immutability. I'm kind of a functional. I've kind of bought into the whole functional programming paradigm, and so I really want things to be immutable, because that makes software development easier. It makes reasoning about software better. However, there's some difficulties with creating immutable structures in JavaScript in particular, because JavaScript is by default not immutable. So you have to add stuff on. It's an extra layer that you have to add on to it. And so that makes it difficult, and it's perhaps an unnecessary difficulty. And it's there's creating an ECS system, and then there's creating an immutable ECS system. I haven't figured out how to create the ECS system. So having the extra complexity around making it immutable as well, especially as I'm battling the type system within TypeScript, and it really is a little bit of a slog with the type system, because that's sort of the key to this whole immutability thing. Is that you're really trying to not step on your own toes in some sense. So having it immutable and typed as immutable is, I think, important. If you're going to do one, you kind of want both. But it's difficult. I think that's just a difficult problem to solve in JavaScript. And ECS is a difficult problem as well. One doesn't necessarily have to work both of those difficult problems at the same time, is kind of what I've discovered. I think that one can create an ECS system, one can create an immutability abstraction, let's call it, and then one can combine the two later on. Those things can be combined, they can be composed. So it's our old friend, create little small stuff that can be composed together sort of idea there. So that was the lesson I learned on that day. So is this the same day? Yeah, same day. Simplified ECS roguelike study. So this is the new project that I'm actually currently still working on. And the name for this is Simplified ECS. So I've decided that I really want to make my ECS system as small and simple as possible with this study. And I think that will hopefully allow me to move faster as I'm creating my game. So let's see what I did here. Recreate modules. Lessons learned. Yes, entity is only an ID. That was an old lesson I learned before. Granular systems and grouping of systems for ease of management. So that was another thing that I learned, was that one really wants very small systems. Again, it's sort of a composability thing, right? But one also at some scale wants to work with larger groups of systems. So you want to have, I think what it's going to end up being is almost a hierarchy of systems, where you have for instance, the one that's coming to mind right now is your rendering system, right? But my rendering system needs to do a few things. Like, one of them is to actually perform the render, right? To actually draw stuff on screen. But I also have to translate between my entity, my concept of entities, and the 3GS concept of renderable objects, the object 3D or the meshes within that system. So I have to have a translation of that. So those are both subsystems within the rendering system. And I think that's probably the way to go, is to think of it as you want your systems to be as small as possible. Abstract key concepts. So again, this is a little bit of a reiteration that the things that I don't understand, I really want to shield myself from by creating abstractions. Like, tomorrow me is a little bit smarter than today me, and so I want to give tomorrow me the opportunity to solve the problem better and easier than today me is able to do. Extending an entity. I have no idea what I meant by that. Removing an entity from the pool. Oh, so this is, these are just problems. Removing component from entity. So these are just problems that I dealt with was how do you actually manipulate the entities and the components within the system. And so this is what I was going to, or I am focusing on in this current re-implementation of my ECS module is how to better do that. And I'll go over the code on how I've solved it for the moment. So somebody might have some interest in that. So separate art game project modules. So I think, again, it's this, like, it's an old lesson. You really want small, simple little things, and then you compose them together. So having one project that is both the game and the art is, you want to keep those a little bit separate. When I say the art, I mean like what I'm doing these renderings, for instance, right? That are just purely artistic renderings. And then I have this game that I'm trying to create that has, input and controls and game mechanics and that sort of thing. And those are kind of two different sort of fields of play. And they're good to have. I think it's good to have both within the same, do I want to say project, or, as I've discovered that game development and art development kind of want to work hand in hand on the same base, the same kind of code base, but they want to be separate at the same time. So you do want to kind of separate them. That probably made no sense except for me. To me, visual art development is good for all of game development. Yeah. Publish art on platforms such as my website. So these are goals, right? So these are things that I want to do in the next project. Publish art on platforms. So the thing I'm not doing currently is I'm creating these moving art pieces. I don't know what you would want to call them, but I'm kind of digging them. They're just infinitely run sort of thing, and they change. It's almost like looking at a lava lamp or something like that, right? How it just sort of continually changes, and there's different shapes and forms, colors, and so forth that come to light. And so I'm kind of digging these little art pieces. And right now I'm kind of showing off little clips on YouTube and Instagram and so forth, or screenshots, like I did earlier. But it's actually software that just runs and can kind of run forever. And if you view the software, it's a much higher resolution, and you can just have it run forever. So I want to publish these little dudes, on various places, and like maybe itch.io might be a good place to put them. I'm not really, obviously my own website would be a good place. So I just need to figure out how I want to do that, and then also how I want to maintain that software. So I have not thought really much at all about how I want to maintain things that I publish, or I haven't thought about it in a while, let's call it, how I want to maintain the software going forward. And so that's a problem I need to solve, especially with my module system and how I'm doing modules by effectively directly relating to the current the current working tree, let's call it, of the other module projects. So I'm not, for instance, limiting myself to just a particular version of a module. I'm just saying, give me whatever the latest happens to be on disk. And so that's not so good for maintaining a particular project long term, which is fine for now because all I'm doing is studies. But if I do actually publish something, I'm going to want to maybe bug fix or what have you. So, careful, there's going to be a bump here. I need to get a shock mount for the microphone. That'd be a good next thing to get, probably. All right. Performance is greater than safety in game development. So I spent a lot of time with my ECS, redeveloping my ECS system. And one of the things I got into focusing on was performance. And I sort of, at the beginning, I thought, well, I don't have to make it immutable, but I can still do it safe by effectively doing that little trick where you just copy things, right? You just have an object, and I'll just create a copy of the object, like all the things within it, and then I'll that'll be my return value. It's just my copy thing, so that way I'm not, sort of a guard against the world changing from underneath your feet. But that just really kills performance. So if I'm going to do So this is a little bit of a hangover for me really wanting to be, this maybe a hangover from my past corporate development experience, right? Where it's really things being correct is real important, right? That you don't have bugs that, crop up in a production system. So safety is real important. And well, for a lot of software or corporate software developer, right? Because the system that you're creating is, it's people are relying on it and so forth. For games, not so much, right? If a game crashes, yeah, it's not that big a deal, really. So performance is definitely better, or the thing that one wants to focus on more than safety in game development. And so I think you can kind of have both. I think you can have your cake and eat it too. And I think that I can still do the immutable ECS with my, object.freeze and read-only typings, because those really should not add any performance detriments. But I, it, but since I'm, I've not right now focusing on the immutability aspects of it, I really need to focus on the getting performance by doing the dirty tricks of update in place and so forth. And so that's what I'm doing. And so far it seems to be working okay as far as performance. I have a feeling I'm going to have to revisit that at some point. One time to move away from entities containing values of raised to any value. So this is just kind of me explaining a little bit of, it doesn't even make any sense because this is sort of like half baked. Like the way I was doing my ECS system and then how I'm doing it now. I don't know if that's really going to have any value for anyone listening to this. So again, this is what I just explained about going from, safe object manipulation, copy to unsafe update in place, right? So that's about as unsafe as you can get. If I am going to do immutability, I might want to start looking at Ramda and Immutable.js and so forth, because they have the data structures in place that can do really fast immutable data structures, and there's sort of some tricks to that. And so I'm happy to kind of reuse those tricks, I think, rather than create my own. If I go that route, I might still just do object.freeze and read only and call that a day. But I think there's some value to be had probably in Ramda and Immutable.js for looking at it. But that will be a thing for future Matt to worry about. So today was kind of a fun day. I'm on the upswing, I would say. Well, am I on the upswing? I'm no longer on the downswing. Maybe that's a way of putting it. I really slogged with the ECS system, and I've got it now, the ECS system, to a point where performance is good and ease of use is good. So I've really been focusing on making, this is where why I've been battling the type system so much, is I want the ease of use for my ECS module to be just simple and clear, and just easy to use in real life, and not have some sort of weird thing where it's like, where the complexity of the ECS system starts making me step on my own feet again. So it's just the ease of use is just one of the primary things I'm focusing on. So one of the things I sort of happenstanced upon was breaking what I have been working on, one project for the project that I'm currently working on. But I sort of happened onto, as this idea of breaking, the project into like a game section and an art section. Well, the way I've started off doing that was I had one project and then kind of a sub module for just that project, right? So it's not a module that I would reuse all over the place, right? It's only a module that's interesting in the context of the parent project in some sense. or maybe not. I don't know. But essentially, I have one module for, I'll get into the code maybe a little bit. One module for the packaging, right? The Webpack sort of stuff is what this is kind of what it turned out to be. Was one module for the Webpack stuff, and then one module for my game. And I'll probably perhaps I'll have another module for the art. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that exactly, but that would probably be ideal in some sense. And but that turned out to be really nice because that allows me to, like, all the Webpack crap essentially is just in one module. And it's very tiny, it's very small. It just kind of handles packaging, and then I have like all my code for the game, and that really doesn't have to have anything to do with Webpack or anything like that. And so by having this sort of clear separation of concerns, it really, it's just a very freeing in some sense. It's just I don't have to worry about. I have a nice base from which to go, to build upon going forward, I think. So this is the boot faster thing. I think I figured out how to boot a little bit faster next time by just effectively reusing this top level Webpack package. So I spent so long. So the thing here is that I spent like 2 or 3, 4 days just slogging with the ECS system. And it's a fun slog. It's a puzzle, right? I enjoy the puzzle, figuring out the puzzle sort of thing. But I've got so far into figuring out that puzzle, battling the type system, and just kind of figuring out how I want to do an ECS module, that I've been focused on that for so long now. It's relatively not that long a period of time, but long enough that I've sort of, like, I'm not really, I don't know what I want to do next with the game. Like, I've sort of lost the focus of the game and what I want to do with it and so forth. And so that's where I say that I'm not really quite on that uphill climb. But I'm no longer in the downhill, right? I now have a good base, I think, from which to leap, into something new. But I've lost a little bit of that motivation for creating the game. Like, I'm not unhappy. I'm pretty happy with the engine and so forth, but it's just like, what is the next step? I've sort of, it's sort of like up in the air, right? Which is sort of exciting to some degree, right? But it's just, I need to maybe step back for a moment and think about what I actually, what I want to create. Do I still want to create a roguelike, and that sort of thing, right? So it's just, it's a good moment, I think, to kind of take a moment and just, think about that sort of stuff. So if I do want to kind of get back to zero of where I was with relative roguelike, RRL, these are the things I still have to do, right? I still have to figure out the physics system. I have to, yet again, implement the physics system, an input system, debug system, pathfinding, movement, click to follow. There's probably some others that I'm not putting in here. Or rendering, right? I have to get more complex rendering. So what you're seeing right now in the background is where I am currently with the project, right? So I have 2,000 cubes rotating on the screen, which was effectively kind of where I was a week ago. Actually, not as far, right? Because there's no textures. There's lots of stuff missing, right? But this is sort of like that first step. But this is all nicely running in my ECS system. Like I said, I'll show off the code of how I get to here, and that's really the thing that I'm most proud of in this moment, is just the code base for how to get to 2,000 cubes all rotating and repositioning on the screen, rendering, right? And how to create that. And I think the code to do that with my current engine is now pretty small and compact, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's just, what do I want to create with it, right? That's the key. Like, I'm pretty happy with the game engine, or where that's progressing. It's just, what do I want to create with this thing? And so that's where I am now. Let's get into some code. How long have we been going here? 34 minutes. So this is gonna be another long one. I don't know. Yeah. Hopefully someone finds some value in this at some point. Let's see where we are here. So let's go over. Let's open this up. Make sure that I'm game study. So this is make sure that OBS is. I need to get a little bit more organized with this. Well, let's have another drink of tea as I faff about with this a bit. I can make this all kind of go here. I go here. All right, that's good enough, I think. More tea required. I just hit the keyboard. Hopefully that didn't do anything horrible. All right, shock mount. Need shock mount. All right. Or maybe just another table to put my drink on. That might solve the problem as well. That's good stuff right there. All right. So where are we? What do I want to show off here? Well, I guess we start in the beginning, right? So let's start at the beginning of the beginning, right? So this is the project. This is, well, let's start at the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. Let's start with, if I can even, how am I gonna do this? Searle study. All right. So I have Searle study project and Searle game study. And let's see if I can get OBS to be happy with what I want to show here. All right. So there we go. There's Searle study. All right. And I might as well turn the browser off while I'm doing that. All right. So Searle game study. Hopefully you can see that okay on the screen. So let's start at the beginning of this. So this has way too many dependencies. I just realized I just copied over all the dependencies, so I can definitely clean this up quite a bit because most of these are not needed. So I'll get to that. Index. So this is index.js again, app main. So this looks very familiar, right? And then app main just does basically nothing. It creates a UI, which is just just creating some HTML elements to where to put stuff on the screen and so forth. Which I kind of figure out how I want to do this UI thing, but anyway, work in progress. And then we have game main. This is the game, effectively. What the game does is it imports from Searle game study. So this is where I'm essentially have this other little project, kind of embedded in the master project, if you want to call it that. And so this is all the code there is to the main thing that does the packaging and all that sort of stuff. But if I go back to Searle game study, I need to have multiple VS Code windows. I need to add that to my OBS. What do you call it, an OBS project? Something like that. Anywho, this is Searle game study. I think you're seeing that on the screen okay. Yep. So let's start at the beginning of Searle game study. So Searle game study has a package.json. Blah, blah, blah. So this one's much smaller because I'm just adding things as I need them. So these are all my little modules that I'm depending on. So the ECS one is the one I've been working on the most, obviously. The rest are just I really have not been messing with. My object module I've worked on a bit recently, and this is essentially my protection against the JavaScript concept of an object and the TypeScript concept of an object, and doing manipulating objects and getting and setting stuff and so forth. And it's sort of a weird Wild West, horrible system. Like you're the base JavaScript object abstraction, right? It's just really messy. And then you have the TypeScript on top of that, which doesn't work the way that I kind of want it to with object. It doesn't work well with like keying the types correctly, or the types of the keys of the object. It doesn't do what I expect it to do. So anyway, there's lots of problems that I've discovered that I don't, or things that I don't like about TypeScript, or some of the decisions maybe made around TypeScript, and some of the decisions obviously that have been made around JavaScript over its long history. And so this is my uh, protection from them, is what that object module is. So let's get into the index. So obviously it doesn't do much, but import Swirl.game. Swirl.game essentially is just two things. It's a set of systems, and then what I call it fabric, which is the overall, this is the kind of the data structure at the heart of everything, right? It's where everything is stored, all your entities and components and so forth. Another sip of tea here. And so that's where this is currently. So you can see it's pretty simple, and I just have, here's all my components, right? I have a render, a component in my mind is just something that effectively just holds a little bit of data, right? So render needs a 0.3, and I have two renders. Why do I have two render? Oh, render position, render rotation. So this is what I had to do as far as naming convention, because obviously this is the render position and the render rotation. Again, this is a lesson I learned from my relative roguelike study, is that everything wants to be relative. So I'm going to have I'm going to try to have a render position and a physics position, right? And those could be different. And so I want to, maybe you never even care about the physics position, but the physics position tells the render system where to render stuff via the render position. So, but maybe, rotation might, I might want to, for instance, how I plan on manipulating things, just to kind of get into that a little bit with the physics, is physics really wants to be manipulated with things like forces, right? You don't set the position directly, you just give it a little force, a little nudge in a certain direction. And so again, this is more like message passing between various systems. So I'll probably have a system that handles movement or something like that by passing in, or by passing a force component onto the entity, and then the physics system will accept that force, remove that particular component, like it's dealt with it, right? It's like an input that I kind of dealt with, and then obviously apply the force inside the Matter.js world, and that'll be kind of how it works going forward, I think. So we'll see how that works. So that's the game. So CTM stands for component type map. So this is the component, and this is the type, right? And this is a mapping between the two. So this is the concept in TypeScript of type maps, I think is what it's called. And so this is so notice this is the type, right, for TypeScript's point of view, but this is the actual meat and potatoes, right? So this is the actual object, the actual JavaScript object, the real object that's going to be manipulated. So I have my initial fabric. So fabric's just a term I came up with for this. Maybe there's a better word for this, but anyway, it abuses me to call this fabric for the moment. So Swirl game. And so that's really all this is just a composition of the fabric, the thing being kind of manipulated, and the systems, things that kind of do the manipulating, right? So I'll just go over maybe some of the systems here. Let's just show off one that's pretty simple here. So this is what I call my spin position system. So this is obviously just kind of a toy system that just, all it does is it rotates, or not rotates, it repositions these 2,000 cubes via these math functions, right? So it doesn't do anything particularly special. It just, updates effectively the positions. But the thing I'm kind of happy with is the fact that I can do this in 24 lines of code, right? That it doesn't take very much code, and that this is pretty clean code, right? It all appears to do what you would, it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on here, right? So I have my fabric, which has a bunch of render positions, right? So I'm getting the entities that, I guess I should probably go into what a fabric is. Let's go into the types of stuff. I assume that anybody who's still paying attention at this point is going to want to know how this actually works. Can I? Probably if I do this. So yeah, let's just go into the types, because I think the types are the easiest way to understand this. Morty, let's just go ahead and make this a long one. I assume that I don't know if you're just enjoying listening to me talk, or if this is actual useful information for you, but either way. Or maybe it's just a record for myself. 20 years in the future. What was I up to back then? All right. So entity value map. So this is pretty simple. I have the concept of an entity and value. So this is where I'm taking a little bit of something I learned, right, in battling the type system, is this concept of branded types, which I went over in a previous devlog. So, just Google TypeScript branded types, and you'll probably run across it. But effectively, it's a way of, TypeScript does structural typing, but sometimes you want nominal typing. And so this is a way of doing nominal typing, because I don't want just any number to be used for this type. I want one that's branded as an entity to be used as this type. And I want the type system that enforce that. Getting that to work is proven difficult, but I've got it working right now, so that's nice. So it's just, obviously a mapping between entities and some value, right? So a point, a boolean, a string, whatever, what have you, right? Some bit of data. So, but the thing I want is I want type safety, right? So that, because I think that makes it easy to use. So that's why I'm running through all these hoops, right? Of like, here's my fabric type that extends something called a component type map. Right, a component type map. Let's see, can I make that a little bigger? I can make this a little smaller. There we go. I think that's all of it anyway. So I'm saying a component value is an object, a string, a number, or boolean presently. So this might get expanded if I ever do fixed types again. Read only, immutable sort of stuff. This is a good abstraction point, right, for me doing that. So I could say, oh no, it has to be a immutable type. So for right now, it's just sort of kind of a standard set of types. This can be, which more or less everything. This is the mapping from just some string, or I say, and this is maybe a little too broad, or I need an abstraction on this or something. So I basically just say anything in an object can use as a key at this moment. So it's that, so it's just some name effectively, right, to a value. So this component value is any. I don't like this any. I need to remember to get rid of that. I had to get rid of that for some weird battle with the type system, but maybe I don't need to do that anymore. But anyway, so there's the component type map. There's what that is. So that's what a fabric is, right? So just a fabric is effectively, again, just a map. So just to give you the concrete one, right? So here's a concrete fabric, right? It's just a set of names, right? And a map, right? And the map is just it holds another map that is, or I'm sorry, it doesn't hold another map. This is just entity. It's a map of entity value pairs, I guess. And so that's really all it is. It's just an so imagine this filled with something that looks like, say I had an entity 0 and their render position. So their position might be 0, 0, 0 or 0, 0, 1 or something, or an entity 192 or something, right? Right now, this doesn't have to be a number. It is a number. I can use a number or a string. It needs to be a primitive of some sort. There might be reasons to make that a number. One of the performance things that I'm trying not to be tempted into, I would say, is the performance of essentially iterating over this object. And there might be reasons why I would want to limit that to just a particular type, like an integer, just for performance reasons. So we'll see if I need to do that. Hopefully, I don't have to. That might be getting too far into the weeds. Whoops, I don't need to do that anymore. All right, let's reformat that. All right. So that was the spin position system. So you can see that it's pretty simple, right? It's just updating, update the fabric. I'll go into the code of that. All right, update fabric. There we go. There we go. So this updates the fabric. You can see that I have both a safe version that does this, kind of obsessive copying all over the place. And then I have an unsafe version, which just does this mutate in place, right? Update in place, right? Just, just get it done kind of thing. And this is faster. This is significantly faster if you do it this way. I just screwed something up. All right. Hopefully that won't save that. But anyway, so it's just the little things you have to do. But I've made a little, get out of jail free thing here. So I'm calling it update fabric, and then I could switch between the two. So this is again the idea of like I don't quite have this idea figured out yet of how I want to update it. So I have this little point here, this little safety valve. If you want to call this an abstraction, right? Another abstraction, like upon my even my update fabric, abstraction has an abstraction kind of thing, abstractions of abstractions. So you can see I just have a nice little tool set for like adding to the fabric. So this is just essentially adding a particular component to the entity. This almost certainly makes sense to no one but me. Like you'd really, this is so dense. The code is so dense at this point that hopefully you get something from just the names, but you really kind of have to think about it for a minute. So I would say don't worry too much on the code at this point, but just know that it's small and compact and and works well. So that's how I do that. Rendering. Let's go over the rendering. I think that's kind of the most advanced system I have currently. So render setup to system. So this is how I'm handling currently systems and subsystems. So this is a thing where I can like condense this a little bit at some point and have a general system. Like this is where it wants to be like a hierarchy of systems. And so how I want to approach that exactly, how general do I want to get on this? So for right now, it's kind of like an unrolled loop, if you want to call it that, where it's like this system is directly calling the subsystem, right? Where it'd be kind of neat, really, if if I just presented my ECS system with a hierarchy of systems and it just sort of did the right thing. That might be kind of a neat thing. Instead of just having a list of systems, maybe you have a hierarchical list of systems. I don't know. That might be getting a little too fancy. But hey, maybe that's just the fun of it. So this is the thing that updates the scene. So it gets a mesh from the mesh cache. I have another system that populates this mesh cache. Make sure that there's an actual mesh for that mesh ID. So one of the things I'm trying to do right now in my fabric, my game fabric, is to make sure that that is completely serializable. And obviously the idea there is to aid for saving the game later on. And so I think this will work okay. I'm not really quite sure I'm gonna cover these things like meshes and so forth and repopulate them. I'm not really sure I'm gonna do that. So we'll find out out how I do that later on. So so this is again another one of my protections from the JavaScript language to some degree. So if and only if, right? There's an object here. So if and only if this is defined, perform this operation. This is actually mapping, so it'll actually return if anything, it returns from here. So that's just kind of a nice, little thing I created for myself. This come in handy. I'll go into the code of it. It's not that hard, right? So it's very simple, right? If and only if it's defined, run the mapper. If not, return undefined. So it's very, very simple, but it's very handy little dude, I would say. So other than that, there's really not a lot in the game right now, right? So there's not really a lot to show off other than the fact that it's, I think the one thing I want to show off is just that it's very easy to create systems, right? So here's the render position, here's the render rotation, right? And one of the things I need to do is I need to get a formatter that actually organizes my parameters and so forth, because I don't, those should be like alphabetical or something like that. But anyway, I'm too lazy to do that for now. So that's really all I've got right now. I have caches for all this stuff, and I have systems, and I have like this base from which to build upon again, and it hopefully will be fairly easy to build upon this base, and that's the idea. And I am finding that it's this particular go round of the engine / game engine is much faster. I'm getting to these certain milestone points of rendering a cube, making the cube rotate, blah, blah, blah. I'm getting to them quicker. And so that feels good. It feels like I'm learning or have learned, or at least my module system is working out well, one or the other. So, I'm getting there, I would say. But I still, one of the things is that I'm a little bit bummed about, as I say, is that I see where I was with like RRL, the relative roguelike project that I abandoned, a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, I was fairly far along in that particular game / game engine. But, I had, quote unquote, had to abandon it because, it kind of got to the point where, as I said, it sort of, the weight of progressing became too much, right? It's just, I got too many things, quote unquote, wrong, right? And so, but I did make a lot of progress. It was doing a lot of stuff, and it was performing well. And, I see where I am now, and it's sort of, it's just so early. It's like a blank piece of paper with just a few lines on it, right? And whereas my previous piece of art, let's call it, was pretty well drawn, and it had everything was kind of there, and you could kind of see something, kind of see where it was going, and it was it's just further along, right? But I abandoned it, and so now I'm working with this new sketch, let's call it, and like I said, perhaps that's a mistake, right? To look back at your past and compare yourself to that. Maybe it's better just to compare yourself to where you are now. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the lesson learned there. Anyway, I think I'm just getting on to rambling time at this point. How long we've been going? Almost an hour. So this will be my longest devlog yet, I think. If you're still paying attention, well, thank you. Give me a shout out somewhere. Let me know that you're enjoying this, or if you're not, hopefully you're enjoying it. But anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day for this devlog, and in the next one we'll see where I am. Hopefully it's going to be really cool. We'll see though. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. Catch you later. Bye.